This video is sponsored by DistroKid. If the prices of certain plugins have you and your wallet terrified, then don't worry, because in this video, I'm going to overview some affordable alternatives to expensive mixing plugins so you don't have to spend as much to sound just as good. I'll be suggesting alternatives to big plugins you've probably seen me and other creators talking about in this space, including the FabFilter Pro Q, Soothe 2, Izotope RX, and more. I'm going to focus making this video applicable all year round, so we're not really going to be relying on sales as much, and instead just the regular price of each plugin that I highlight. If you take my advice, what I'm about to show you is going to save you at least $1,000, as you'll see by the end of this video. And make sure you stick around till the end, because after I go through my recommendations, I'll give you a couple of strategies that'll help you score even the most expensive plugins for less, making you and your wallet happy. But first, let's define what expensive and affordable is in this context. To put a number on it for the sake of this video, I want to keep all suggestions that I present to you at $75 USD or less. Now, before you click away, I am going to be suggesting a bunch of free tools as well, so not everything is going to come with a price tag. As always, I'm going to be leaving links to everything that I mentioned down in the description below, and make sure you pay attention to those, as some come with extra discounts that you're not going to find anywhere else. Speaking of saving, one way that I've kept more money in my pocket is by using the sponsor of today's video, DistroKid, to distribute my music on streaming platforms. They make getting your music on a store a breeze with their simple interface, and they pass on 100% of the earnings generated from your music directly to you. Other distributors make you pay every time you upload something, or they keep a percentage of your earnings, which ultimately ends up costing you more. With DistroKid, you pay a low annual subscription fee that lets you distribute unlimited music for the year, making it much more convenient and less expensive than the other guys. DistroKid also gives you access to helpful tools for content creation and marketing your release, including hyperfollow landing pages, the Visi video generator, and much more. Millions of artists, myself included, love using DistroKid, and I'm sure you will too. You can save 7% off your first year by hitting the link down in the description below. Thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring this video, and now back to the content. Now, the first plugin that I want to showcase alternatives to is the FabFilter Pro Q. Now, I'll be honest, I love this plugin. It's basically the only digital EQ you'll ever need, and for me, it's a staple in every mix that I do. That being said, at $179, it's not exactly cheap, especially for just the one plugin. However, a lot of stock EQs do a great job already, even though they may be missing some key features that the FabFilter Pro Q offers. For example, in Ableton, I love using the 8-band EQ. It's easy to use and honestly just as effective for making simple adjustments. The same can be said for Pro Tools, particularly the channel strip's built-in EQ. However, what sets the Pro Q apart is its ability to create dynamic bands and its sidechain input functionality specifically. These features make it incredibly versatile at tackling a wide range of mixing tasks. That being said, as I'm recording this, FabFilter just released the Pro Q4, introducing a lot of improvements to the previous version. I honestly haven't even upgraded yet, as it literally just came out a few hours before I'm shooting this video, but from what I've seen so far, a lot of the new features and functionality seems to be geared towards rivaling Soothe 2, which we're going to explore some more affordable alternatives to next. So rest assured, even though the Pro Q4 is that new shiny toy with a lot of useful features that set it apart, there are still multiple affordable alternatives to it, as we're about to explore. This is where my first affordable suggestion comes in, and that would be the TDR Nova from Tokyo Dawn Labs, and the best part is it's free. TDR Nova offers many of the Pro Q's advanced features, like static and dynamic band creation, sidechain input with threshold linking, and even a frequency analyzer for visual feedback. But there's one area where even the TDR Nova falls short of the Pro Q, and that would be dealing with frequency masking. I've covered how to identify and fix frequency masking in great detail in a previous video, which I'll link to down in the description below, but the Pro Q lets you visually pinpoint masking between two sounds quickly and easily. By placing an instance on each track, you can set the analyzer to recognize the other track's EQ. Areas of overlap will become highlighted in red, showing you exactly where masking is happening, so you could fix it directly within the plugin. TDR Nova unfortunately doesn't provide this level of assistance. You'd first need to manually identify the masked frequencies yourself, which can be time-consuming and tricky to get right. And that's why I'd suggest you pick up another affordable plugin that'll automatically identify and correct this problem for you, and that plugin is Track Spacer 2.5 from Waves Factory. Track Spacer automatically identifies and fixes frequency masking between two tracks. For example, place it on a bass track, sidechain it to a kick drum, and it will prioritize the kick by dynamically reducing competing frequencies in the bass when they happen. You can also fine-tune the effect with settings like low cut, high cut, and ratio controls, giving you increased flexibility over how much reduction takes place. It's intuitive and efficient and handles most of my sidechaining these days, even with the FabFilter Pro Q at my disposal. disposal. TrackSpacer sells for about $59 regular price, and it arguably handles frequency masking even more seamlessly. I also have a whole video dedicated to using TrackSpacer to fix frequency masking in a mix, which I'll leave down in the description below for you to watch later. But by combining the free TDR Nova for dynamic EQ and sidechain functionality, your DAW's stock EQ for basic tasks, and TrackSpacer to deal with frequency masking, you've got a complete toolkit for EQ and solving masking issues specifically, all for $59 instead of the $179 for the Pro Q alone. Now, another plugin you've probably heard a lot about is Soothe 2, a dynamic resonance suppressor that's great for automatically tackling harsh or resonant frequencies in individual tracks, groups, or even your master bus. It's a fantastic tool, but let's be real, it's one of the priciest plugins out there, and it has a very niche role in audio. For a while, Soothe 2 was in a league of its own, but now there are some excellent alternatives out there that won't break the bank. The first one I want to highlight is Waves Curves Equator. Curves Equator sells for $79 regular price, which I'll admit is technically a bit above the budget I established at the beginning of this video. But honestly, for an extra $4, it's definitely worth considering. Plus, let's be real, Waves almost always has a sale going on, so the chances of you paying full price for it are pretty slim these days. I've also done a full video review on Curves Equator, which also includes a direct comparison to Soothe 2. If you're interested in checking it out, I'll leave that down in the description below as well. It's also great at addressing frequency masking and sidechaining specifically, which in a way means it can effectively replace TrackSpacer 2.5 if you decide to go for this option instead. It's worth noting though that I do prefer the simplicity of TrackSpacer to just create space between two competing tracks and reduce that frequency masking in the process, whereas I'll use something like Soothe or Curves Equator and these other suggestions like I would a dynamic EQ treating a specific resonant problem within the track itself. Another option worth checking out is mastering the mix's Rezo. Rezo sells for $62 regular price, making it even more budget-friendly than the Waves Curves Equator. Rezo helps you pinpoint and resolve resonances transparently by giving you clear targets for adjustments while still leaving you in control of the outcome. So before you shell out the big bucks for Soothe 2, consider trying one of these more affordable alternatives. They may just do the trick. But now let's talk about pitch correction, starting with AutoTune, the industry standard as we all know. There are a few versions of AutoTune available, but if you're aiming for something with most of the essential features, AutoTune Artist is likely the version that you're going to want to spring for. AutoTune Artist includes real-time low latency mode, allowing you to hear the effects of AutoTune as you record, which isn't possible with the Pro version. It also gives you a lot of flexibility with its parameters, giving you control of the retune speed, input type, tracking, and much more. However, at a regular price of $349, it could definitely get pricey. If you need something more budget-friendly, AutoTune Access might just work. At $50, it's a more limited version, offering fewer controls, but it's still effective and simple for basic pitch correction. In fact, it's worked well for me for many of my recording sessions in the past. But before you even spend that $50 on AutoTune Access and its limited functionality, I recommend that you try this free plugin from Melda Productions called M-Auto Pitch. Really, it's in the same ballpark as AutoTune Access in terms of its simplicity, but instead of paying $50, you can get it for $0. The only thing you'll really need to verify is if you like how it sounds. But with no cost involved, there's really no risk in trying it. It does cover the basics, being automatic tuning and pitch correction. That being said, if you're looking for something that's more feature-packed and comparable to AutoTune Artist specifically, then I'd recommend you take a look at Waves Tune Real Time. It gives you access to a variety of parameters to shape how the tuning sounds, including pitch correction amount, speed, and range, among others, and it's very comparable feature-wise to AutoTune Artist. It's also excellent at recording vocals in real time with low latency. But I'll admit this, and pretty much any other pitch correction alternative to AutoTune out there is going to run you more than the $75 we established earlier in this video. That means Waves Tune Real Time is regularly priced at $199, but I'd be surprised if you really paid that much, especially since Waves is almost always running a sale. If you time things right, you can usually snag it for $50 or less. So before you splurge on AutoTune Artist or even Access for that matter, give M-Auto Pitch a try for free, or check out Waves Tune Real Time when it's on sale. It's probably the closest, most affordable alternative you'll find. And while AutoTune and the other alternatives I've suggested are great at automatic tuning and adding some texture to a vocal, sometimes you want pitch correction that sounds more natural and transparent. And for that, many mixers turn to Melodyne, which is fantastic for manual tuning and giving you a more transparent sound. However, just like AutoTune, Melodyne can be expensive. The Essentials version retails for $99, and while it's better than nothing, it's still pretty basic. The next step up is Melodyne Assistant, which is priced at $249. And that's the version that I used to use until I stumbled upon the plugin that I'm about to show you. And that plugin is Repitch from Synchro Arts, which I would say is just as powerful as Melodyne, but much more affordable. It comes in two versions, Elements, which is priced at $69, and Standard, which goes for $149. I want to focus on the Elements version since Standard is priced just beyond the budget we established earlier in this video. Elements covers all of the basics you'll need: manual tuning, control over pitch, timing, vibrato, and pretty much everything else required to tighten up a vocal performance. And just like Melodyne, Repitch is an ARA supported plugin. That means you can access it directly within your DAW without needing to insert it like a traditional plugin. And because you're watching this video, you can get an additional 20% off of Repitch by using the links that I provide down in the description below. But now let's explore some alternatives to another popular plugin and one that I rely on in every mix, and that would be Izotope RX 11. But first, let me address the elephant in the room. There really is no full replacement for Izotope RX. Yes, it is expensive, and even their most basic version of Elements sells for $99. And me personally, I would recommend at least getting the standard version, which is $399. Lest we forget that the advanced version is over $1,000, almost $1,200 actually. And to remind you, I am going to show you some strategies on how to save money and get these plugins for even less a little bit later in this video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But RX 11 gives you access to pretty much everything and anything you'd possibly need for audio repair. And that spans 18 plugins from mouth declickers to deplosives, de-reverbs, spectral editors, and so much more. To buy 18 comparable plugins for all of these processes would probably cost you just as much, if not more, than purchasing RX in and of itself. However, I do have a few suggestions that can cover most of the essential stuff without breaking the bank. To do that, we first need to establish what are the most common vocal editing problems we encounter in a mix, and then finding plugins to help solve them specifically. In my experience, there are three main editing problems that we need to tackle. The first is dealing with background noise and hum. The second is handling mouth noise like clicks and plosives. And the third is addressing poorly recorded audio that's clipping or distorted. Now, ideally, we don't have to deal with these problems, but unfortunately, they're pretty common, especially as most people are recording at home in less than ideal environments these days. And one of the best plugin bundles that I've found to address these problems is the Aecon Digital Restoration Suite. This includes 4 plugins: denoise to handle background noise, dehum for hum noise, declick for mouth clicks and plosives, and declip for fixing clipping and poorly gained staged recordings. The bundle costs $99 regularly priced, but considering that it comes with 4 plugins, you're essentially paying less than $25 per plugin. Plus, this package will cover all of the essential editing problems that might be tough to solve with manual editing or stock plugins alone. To see some of these tools in action, check out my video on fixing noisy vocals, which I'll link to down in the description below. Now, to tie everything together, let's imagine that we just went out on a shopping spree and bought a bunch of the plugins that I presented to you in this video. How much do you think it would cost you? Well, if you bought all the expensive plugins that I mentioned, including the FabFilter Pro Q, Soothe 2, AutoTune Artist, Melodyne Assistant, and RX Standard, you would have just spent $1,385. However, if you went with some of the more affordable options that I showed you, specifically the cheapest ones being Track Spacer, Rezo, Repitch Elements, and the Aecon Digital Restoration Suite, you would have spent about $275 and also gotten TDR Nova and M-Auto Pitch for free. That's a savings of over $1,100 compared to the expensive plugins. You could also swap out Track Spacer and Rezo and use Curves Equator in their place, since it can handle both resonance suppression and frequency masking tasks, while still getting all the other tools I mentioned and saving a few bucks more. That would run you around $233, saving you an extra $50. And if after some use M-Auto Pitch is just not your cup of tea and you prefer something with a little bit more flexibility, you could upgrade to Wavestune Realtime for an extra $199 if it's not on sale, and you'd still only be spending about a third of what you'd spend on the expensive plugins while improving your workflow and covering all your bases. And of course, all of these scenarios assume that you're starting from scratch, but if you do have some of these tools already, then you're going to spend even less and be in an even better position. Combine this with your current stock plugins, and you really have no need to buy these more expensive tools unless you prefer their workflow, sound, aesthetic, and features. That's something that you're going to have to decide eventually, but I know that I can make a mix work with just these tools that I've presented today. Now, as I promised earlier, there are ways to score these expensive plugins for even less. I can't promise that these strategies will work every single time, but if you follow them, you may just end up with a few extra dollars in your pocket and that sweet new plugin that you've had your eyes on and want to use in your next project. My first tip is to subscribe to newsletters from your favorite plugin brands, and this offers two advantages specifically. The first is an immediate discount. By simply subscribing to their newsletter, most brands will give you a discount code for a future purchase. And the second advantage is early sale access. You'll be the first to know when the brand is having any sales, giving you a head start on saving money in the process. The second tip is to time your purchases around holidays. Every brand typically puts their plugins on sale around key events and holidays throughout the year, including New Year's in January, Easter in April, back to school in late August or early September, Black Friday and Cyber Monday in November, and Christmas and Boxing Day in late December. While other sales might of course happen throughout the year, these ones are almost guaranteed every single time. For example, FabFilter consistently runs a 25% off promotion for Black Friday and then again for the holidays. Therefore, if you're considering a new plugin purchase, check to see how close you are to one of these holidays and decide if it's worth waiting a little bit longer for a sale. My third suggestion, and another effective strategy, is to buy the lowest tier option available and upgrade later. I've personally done this with Izotope Ozone and Melodyne in the past, and the advantage is you'll be able to upgrade later for the difference between the plugin you have now and the upgraded version. However, in my experience, that upgrade price is usually less than the difference, especially when you time it with a sale or the next tip that I'm about to share with you. My fourth tip is to explore personalized offers from plugin brands you've already purchased from. Some companies like FabFilter offer personalized offers and discounts to their existing customers. You can log into your FabFilter account to see if you're eligible for any special upgrades or offers. I'm sure other brands do the same, so be sure to check out your own personalized offers if you've bought a plugin in the past. And my final tip, specifically for those of my audience who are still students, is to use your student discount. Many companies offer student discounts and even educational discounts as a whole, particularly if you're an instructor, for example, which can dramatically reduce the cost of a plugin. I wish I had taken more advantage of this when I was a student at audio college, but I was honestly a broke student trying to get by. But let my mistake be your gain if you have the budget for it. Now let's talk about some plugins that truly stand alone. I'm talking about plugins where there's no viable alternative for. I overview what those tools are in this video that I'm going to leave on screen for you to watch next. If you got value out of the video, please smash that like button and subscribe if you're new to see more mixing content, tips, and tutorials like this in the future. I appreciate y'all for watching and look forward to helping y'all again soon. Peace.
5